it's actually this little cluster of cities along the coast,
Right.
and then there's just nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just look at
Yeah.
you get
Right.
absolutely
Yeah.
nothing by comparison
Yeah,
until
no,
you
you're
all
right. You're right.
to
You're
what
right.
40
You're
miles from
right.
Arizona, and
Yeah.
then get to Imperial County.
Redwoods to
Yeah.
the Mojave,
I know.
so to coastal regions. So we,
Yes.
we
So
have
sorry, but it's the way it is.
So it is one. So unfortunately, it's what I was trying to identify as a bioregion. We'd identify as 7, 8, 9, 25 bioregions.
Yeah.
And then those bioregions would start competing with each other to see which one was the best.
Look at
Why
Los
do you
Angeles
think-
County.
why
Los
do you
Angeles
think
County is like
the-
even
yes.
that's 11
Yes.
million people in a vast
Precisely.
nothing
Yeah.
to the north.
So it's one of those. It's easy. It's kind of in some ways it's kind of easier for Cascadia to do what they're doing because
Very
they're A, not under attack, and B, yeah, they're basically racially homogenous,
They have a real similar cultures.
and similar cultures.
Hasta pronto.
What I do like about Cascadia, was their approach to the indigenous.
Oh.
Obviously the approach they took was had more subtlety than what we've managed so far. We may want to look at what they did. So we may want to look at what they did with and possibly replicate their success. Scotland is very good on that. Scotland's very good on the idea of national pride. No matter who you are, you're a Scot.
That's
Right.
You know, we need. You know, if we could get that going, no matter who you are and where you are, you're a Californian.
Yeah.
Right.
You're a Californian.
Yeah.
No matter where you came from or what language you speak, when you're here and you're one of us.
No matter what bioregion you live in. And that's
Why
why do you think the Hollywood, that the motion picture industry moved from its origins in New York to here?
Well,
Here's the Sahara Desert. Here's
Well,
Switzerland.
listen, you can have a small
Right,
museum
right,
built
right.
for. I just point out that you can have a small museum built for great Californians who weren't born in California. I think like half the governors in California probably weren't born in California.
Yeah,
That's true.
Pat Brown wasn't from California,
Mhm.
you know, and John Muir wasn't from California,
Mhm.
you know, and of course then all the movie stars, I mean, they all came from somewhere else.
we also had the idea of Bob. We also had and we haven't spoken about him was because he was kind of an outlier, but Robert Jackson, the Robert Jackson proposal.
Robert Jackson's proposal?
Yes, the one who was talking about breaking up the United States.
Oh, yeah.
Within the structure of the United States.
Oh.
There were,
okay.
It's one of those things where, to my way of thinking, when he started to speak on this, it, for lack of a better term, it felt sort of a very angular approach. We're going to basically use the existing Constitution by kind of angling around things to get votes to break the United States into multiple regions. Yes, no, I don't. There may be something there that we have. I didn't get a chance to really look at it more closely. It would be something to explore. It's like because there's a certain amount of either this fellow is way out in left field, or he might have a point. Or he might have points that we can possibly look at to take advantage of. We had that kind of sort of stretch across the board whether it was Dave Gregory talking about what happened in Paradise, California, and the need for the activist community to embrace the community, or Mr. Jackson talking about using the federal courts and the federal Constitution to break California out of the United States in a Western breakout. This conference that was put on by everybody was big. Had you'd have to admit had dramatic scope. Had a dramatic scope, and a lot of information. So this was terrific.
Oh, sure, it was terrific.
Let me share a little tidbit. The MIBC proposal to divide Alta at the 36th parallel works very much to our favor. You know, the Trumpsters are like really strong in Central Valley, right? Well, they're losing strength. I'll concede that.
Yeah.
But if I tool down to 5, what do we say? Keep America great again. Oh no.
Oh yeah, loudmouth.
Of course, I get that going down to like San Diego too. So, but here's the beautiful thing: if you do that division along the 36th parallel, That puts Bakersfield, major conurbation of the Central Valley on one side, and Fresno, a major on the other side. It breaks the Central Valley up politically.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got a little kind of a gerrymander going on there that I'm kind of proud of for them to think of. They didn't do it for that reason, but kind of a side effect. It breaks the Central Valley up politically.
Well, I think it's interesting about, I don't know if it's physically possible actually to have the state capital or of a national capital in Los Angeles, but I would like to point out that this was Pio Pico's idea.
Oh,
If you didn't know
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Because at the time, Los Angeles was the most populated city in California.
Ah.
Only-
Except that he was opposed to our independence.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's another story, but he wanted
That's
California
another story, but he did actually.
Marcus
You know what
needs to
happened?
leave soon,
He
guys,
did
so we
move
need
it.
to-
I don't know.
We
Don't you need
should wrap
We need
up.
to wrap it up.
I
Let's
thought-
go.
Well,
Hey, before y'all go, can I talk for 10 minutes?
Yeah,
No, 10 minutes.
5 minutes! Jesus fucking Christ!
Whoa!
You're the one that said you wanted to leave.
You said you got 5
We're gonna
minutes.
talk to your manager for your apartment. You split the time.
Would you two guys mind sitting? 5 minutes, I'll be done.
We have to sit.
I'm timing this shit. I'm timing this shit.
Great.
I feel like a restless child by this time.
Look, they can't see you from there. They can't see you there. Daniel, they can't see you there.
Well, look, kid, I've been pushed out of my.
we got chairs over there.
We got tons of chairs over
Come on
there.
in, sit down.
I'll make it worth your time. Wow.
You have $100. Make it worth my time.
Sorry.
10 minutes. It's only been an hour and a half.
Okay, I'm gonna go really fast for 5 minutes, and the
Almost
reason
a real
I'm talking is my ego.
Yeah.
No.
No, I'm sure you have something
Okay,
important
so
to share.
all right, so here's what I would like for us to do going forward. These are my ideas, of course. Ignore them. Don't ignore them. Think about them. Share them. 1. We had 1/3 of California who was into secession February 2017. That's 3 years ago. None of those people left because they said, I don't think the idea is workable. They heard rumors, all I'm not going to bring up. They heard this, they heard that, they saw infighting. We were not trashed in the news because they go, fundamentally, California couldn't financially afford it. There's no way it could get nations to recognize. No one, the press wouldn't even say that because they knew there's no way in hell they could sell that.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't go, oh, we'd automatically lose money. It was like, no, you're a donor state. So just point that out. We didn't lose the ideological battle at all, not one bit. That's not what they came for us. We lost all sorts of, you said this or you said that, or maybe you're this or secretly that or monsters or whatever. Okay, I was part of it. You're right, bad moves. But that's key because the actual survey, again, 2017, is 47.5% said willing to discuss. And because of red state secession, pointed this out to me first, they undercounted Latinos by 50% and overcounted elderly Caucasian people by 30 to 40% in both the Stanford and the Reuters surveys.
Wow.
And just to be clear,
Interesting.
your average Latino does not think like your average elderly white person. Okay? My dad's an elderly white person. I love him. Great. He does not think like my friends who are 30 and Mexican of heritage. Okay? Just putting that out there. 50% undercut. When you look at that, it goes up above 50%.
Yeah.
So the actual survey 2017 was over half said, I'm down to think about this.
Yes.
If we converted those people who said I'm open to it, that's a controlling vote.
Yep.
Now, some people, you need 65%. No, Brexit passed with like 52 or 53%,
Yeah. It wasn't even that.
legally binding.
Yep.
That happened this week. So
Yeah.
international law now accepts the precedent of barely over 50%
Of
is enough to
those-
leave.
Of those who voted.
Of those who voted,
Right.
right. And this is part 2. 60% of the population typically doesn't vote, I think.
It's 17% of them vote.
Yeah,
17%.
so it's a tiny percent. So what we're talking about is over half said, I'm willing to think about this in a place where less than 30% actually vote.
Right.
Which means if we get 55% talking about this, at least a third of California is going to be like,
Let's
That's
do
right.
it.
Why not?
I mean, I don't like that, but I'm not going to do shit just
Exactly.
to stop it. So
Exactly.
really, we only need to reactivate the
That's
numbers
right.
we
That's
already
absolutely
had
right.
in
That's
February
right.
2017. I want to make that clear.
Yeah,
we only
yeah,
need to
yeah. You
reactivate
think?
the numbers we already had. We don't need to gain new people.
Really?
We don't need to know. We don't need to convert any new person at all. We need to contact
We gotta
the
make
people.
those people go out and
who-
actually vote.
We need
on
to reconnect with the
Right.
people who were already interested in this idea in February 2017. We do not need to gain any new members. That's strategic.
Mm-hmm.
it. Wow.
So the other thing was, at that time when we were really big, we always had these conversations about, would it be better to have 1,000 okay members or just 100 hardcore mofos? And you know, majority of the people who were doing activism when times were good and we had tons of people said, I would prefer 100 hardcore
Yeah.
over 1,000 medium. They said that in 2017,
I
2018,
agree.
when we did not have a problem with membership. The people in the game were saying, I'd rather have 100 hardcore.
Yeah.
I'd rather have
Same
100 hardcore. Well, I got to tell you, 3 years later, I've calculated out to be about 100 hardcore people who I've never even met some of these people. Josiah, who's that?
Oh,
I don't know.
shit.
But I know that name's been around for 3 years.
Yeah.
David
Wow.
Gregory. I don't know this fool, but everybody told me he's been around. So
Yeah.
let's say you're a CIA spy. Here's the CIA spy, okay? I want to infiltrate the movement. I've been around since day one. Okay, well, let me just make a few phone calls. No, nobody's heard of you, homie. Because there's about 100 people who've heard about 100 people going back about 3 years. And if you ain't in that list, there's no way you get to be in there. So we have 100 hardcore because there was that many people who just, Melissa Love. I never met her.
Melissa.
Oh, yeah,
I miss
Melissa
her,
Love.
man.
I don't. There's
Oh,
all
Hokey
these
Smokes
people
Bullwinkle.
who were
She was
around.
hardcore. She loved it, dude. but
There was all
it's-
these people who were around. Yeah, but they didn't leave because they didn't say. I
that
work with someone called
personal shit.
Joyce.
Yeah.
She left.
Yeah.
Yes, she's like, I've heard some rumors and I'm leaving. Joyce never said.
Joyce.
I forget
Thompson.
the last name. I don't know.
Oh,
It's
you
someone.
seriously?
Stop!
Joyce was
Stop!
the last?
Stop! I worked with someone named Joyce. I'm not guessing what the last name was. The point of the story was, it was a smart person. They said I
Yes.
left because of the rumors. They never said I left because I don't think California could pull it off. There are 55% of the population here in California who are open to this idea. We need to reconnect. We don't need to convert anybody new at all. So I am dedicating myself right now, and I'm clearing it. Yes, California is going to dedicate itself to not be a group. We are going to be a recognized entity that boosts and hype. So if you like online marketing, come see me or talk to John Pomeroy, and we'll hook it up. I like the idea that CNP's already been around. They have street cred. They've been in the news a couple of years. It's harder than hell to get somebody to believe you're real if you don't have a news TV article or a newspaper thing pointing that out. End of story. So Independent California also does have news. You guys have been on TV a couple times. That means your street cred. CNP, same thing. So I know the CFC, same thing. I know CFC's a few people. I know they haven't done anything. They were on TV, end of story. You have street cred. So let's support CFC, CNP, and ICA, Independent California, and make them all really great and big, but we collectively pledge ourselves to grow those groups. I will not have Yes try to do any membership. We will do marketing.
Awesome.
People can work with me on marketing and promotion.
Great.
So we will do marketing and promotion. That still means I'm going to try to people to wear a shirt for pics. Doesn't mean we're actually organizing stuff. So we're going to back the other 3 groups. I'm dedicating Yes to that now. And I also dedicating myself to the marketing proposals that Ken is coming up with. She's really exploring some great runs with political action committees for refugee status for Grand California. Hannah.
Oh,
Hannah is exploring marketing things. I'm not going to get into them right now. I think she could cover that better. But she has some interesting ideas on how to get us out there. However, they're not exactly what I would call a group. They're more like a conceptual idea that can get marketing. I'm also pledging myself, besides growing the 3 groups, to growing Your California Today, which is the national news for California. Every nation has a news station. We don't.
So check out the Californian. It's an online online journal.
Sure.
It's on issue number 4 or 5 right now. The Californian.
I know about it, and I'm impressed by it.
I know.
but
No, I know, but-
you need to have more like a weekly type
Yeah,
of
it's,
fee.
it's a, this is a yearly. They do 10 issues a year.
Yeah.
I'll
Oh.
check it
It's a
out.
journal.
But here's the
Yeah.
thing. But here's the
This is
thing.
going
I
on.
have not seen
Bills.
anybody talk about the stuff we talk about.
No.
So if they aren't picking up on Gavin Newsom went to Latin America on TV and said we're a separate nation, then they ain't doing it. And if they aren't picking up on we got an ambassador reopening 10 trade stations that are basically embassies from a guy who wanted the UN to be here, then they ain't doing it. So maybe this I'll check them out. If they are great, I'll defer to them. I highly doubt it. We need a national news station that just covers motherfucking news that's happening because the other news stations will not do it.
Right.
They will not cover these news stations. I am dedicated
You need
to
to talk about this a little bit
today.
more. How are you proposing this? Like on YouTube? or
Well,
is this like a whole?
well, we can get into the
Yeah.
details a little bit later. I just
That
want to
sounds
say where I'm suggesting we go. We
Yeah, that's wonderful.
grow 3 groups.
Mhm.
Everybody helps me with marketing if you can. You say,
Of
oh, I know a
course.
guy that's marketing, send him over here. And I will not compete. We go those 3 groups and we all work together to have a national news station
Mm.
that has a merch setup.
Mhm.
And that will be a funding mechanism for all of us
That's awesome.
based upon this plan. It goes like this. We all invest in there. We try to get people to buy merch. The first bucket of cash that comes goes right back into the news station to grow it. When the news station is big enough that it's starting to produce and survive on its own, then and only then do we talk about the money going, because Hannah's got all this 501c3. No, I don't want to get into it. She's got it all figured out on how to do not direct capital injection, but if CFC is holding a particular type of event, then they can go, here's 5K for
Right.
that event. That's how we legally do this. So I'm backing 3 orgs. I'd like all of you to consider backing it. I'm backing a national news station.
Marcus?
Yeah.
You and I planted a seed that has grown into Return California. That's 4.
Well, so good point. I don't consider that a Cal Exit organization. I consider that a project to link the Cal Exit movement or California independence movement to the indigenous. Because bottom line, we are hoping that they will say, yes, I want the land and I want to govern it with you and have some sort of future with you. But as we've always said with Return California, if they say, I want the land back and I don't want to have anything to do with you, we're going to respect that.
Right.
Which means the partnership with CalExit is conditional in Return California. It is not absolute. and
I see what
intentional.
you're saying.
So
Thank
I'm
you for pointing that out.
100% with you on Return California.
Mhm.
If you want to work with getting indigenous people to even think that we're decent people, it's Return California because we're listening to them. But I view that like I view Hannah's projects. So Hannah's working on a PAC. That PAC might involve
already
a few
there.
people.
Mm.
Yeah, but it's
That's
really
interesting.
it's to these are arms to reach out and grab versus 3 groups that are orgs.
Mm.
Great question. That's how I view it, and that's how I suggest we
I
all
see what you're saying.
view it.
Mhm.
I'm going to stop talking.
Awesome.
Alright.
I'm looking forward to that, man.
Before, I'd like to take pictures of all of us standing up. It would be great if somebody
Yeah.
can, because we have movies but not pictures. So
Yeah, it takes you
Those
one-
stills?
Well, you can
Yes.
check out
stills.
your California.
Remember those, Matt? Stills.